What is up, everybody, and welcome to From the Sidelines here on Sports Fluent. If you love NFL football, well, this is the show for you. We're going to be talking about the NFL as we are 10 Sundays away from the NFL kicking off. We're going to be here every Sunday at 8 o'clock, roughly, give or take, and we'll give you guys some takes, some interesting topics that we can talk about each and every single week. And today should be a fun talk as we get rolling. We're going to talk a little bit about some sleeper players, some big breakouts possibly this year. Maybe talking about the windows, and I'm not talking about the windows in your house. We're talking about the Super Bowl windows for certain teams and how big or small they possibly could be. And we kind of go down the Rolodex of teams, and we'll kind of talk about their Super Bowl windows. Which actually, let's start with that, right? So I want to start with obviously the biggest giants, and then kind of see who's those middling teams who could possibly open that window, and maybe there's some hope coming through there. But is there any chance at all that the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl window is closing, or is that thing stuck permanently open until Patrick Mahomes retires?
I think it's open until he retires. I think it's maybe closed a little bit, but I think it's open until he retires. It's kind of like he's still the guy. He's still the number one quarterback in the league, in my opinion. So, and if Andy Reid's still there, now then he's a lot closer to retirement than Mahomes is, being in his late 60s. But I think if you got Reid and Mahomes, you're always going to have a chance. So yeah, I think it's still pretty open, but maybe closed a little bit, but still pretty open.
Jackson?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Joined a little bit late, but yeah, I mean, I think kind of that combination of Reid and Mahomes is what makes them who they are, but their defense is really, what carried them over the hump last year. So as long as they keep a strong defense, even Mahomes showed last year, he doesn't have to play his best football as long as you keep it close enough at the end of the game. Brady had games like that throughout his career as well, where he might not play the best game ever, but if you give him a chance within a score or two with enough time in the fourth, he's threatening. So yeah, I don't see it closing at all. They're still a stout defensive team that can hold it close for when Mahomes doesn't play. But it feels like it's not as open as it was. They don't have the offensive firepower around Mahomes that they used to with guys like Tyreek Hill. And obviously Kelsey is just continuing to decline as he ages, and shouldn't say anything on his legacy. He's just getting older. But yeah, I think it's closing a little bit.
Do you think that we've kind of, and this is a term that you should be pretty familiar with, Jackson, with the point guard quarterback? I feel like it's becoming this new archetype, you can say, of quarterbacks that, hey, we don't necessarily have to invest a ton in the weapons. We just need to have guys who are capable enough, and then let our quarterback be the point guard and distribute it, as they said that with Bryce Young when they drafted him. It was hey, he's just going to be the point guard, and he's just going to boom, boom, boom. But we're starting to see that is kind of being a thing across the league. Yes, I think the Kansas City Chiefs do prioritize speed, so guys can get open quick, so that is going to help with their offense. But then we're kind of seeing that similar to in Washington as well. I definitely think the weapons in Carolina are definitely more improved. But those are the three, quote unquote, point guard quarterbacks, I guess you can say, in the league right now. I would say Baker, but he has Mike Evans. And so, Mike Evans is an absolute dog. I'm trying to think of someone else who fits that.
Maybe Bo Nix.
Bo Nix, 1,000%, yes.
Yeah.
Depends on how Vele, how he develops, because I think he has a lot of potential. But again, it's that's kind of the Sean Payton school of coaching. It's hey, I don't need name brand guys. Great value is perfect. And he did it with Marcus Colston, and he made him into a star. What he did in New Orleans, so I think that's kind of his philosophy. But do you think that point guard archetype of a quarterback is kind of becoming a new trend in the NFL, Cody?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, because back in the day when you had the guys like Favre and Marino, and those are guys that they can make any pass, they can make any throw, so you didn't have to worry about them distributing it. And then if you don't have the receivers, you kind of have to distribute all over the field, like we talked with Bo Nix, maybe Bryce Young as well. if you don't have, Baker Mayfield has Mike Evans, so it's like, okay, get the ball to him. Like that Joe Burrow is a point guard, but he's got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Like, okay, well, it's like, okay, I'm just going to get the ball to them. So I think that is kind of it, because I don't think there's that quarterback right now outside of like the top three. That's that guy that's just like, okay, just do your thing. Like, give you the keys. You can do whatever you want. Like, you can make plays, call plays, things like that. Kind of like Brady and Manning used to do. Don't really have those guys anymore. So the coaches have to kind of reel them in a little bit. Like, hey, here's the play. Here's where you need to go and things like that. So it's a little bit more point guard than it has been in the past. But maybe that, like you said, that's the way it's going. You watch a lot of college football. There's a lot of people like that. Jackson Dart was like that. There's a lot of players in college football that are coming in the NFL where they're getting the ball out quick, first, second read. So I think that's kind of the momentum where quarterback's going, but still a lot of guys that are going to be just ballers, like a Josh Allen, who's just going to be able to make plays and do his thing.
Jackson, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think for as long as passing has been in the NFL, the model that has been so successful has been, you must have a great quarterback with a great receiver, and then a very good or great supporting cast of receivers and tight ends around that, right? And now that tight end could be that great receiver for some people, whether it was Kelsey for a while or Gonzalez or whoever, right? Like there have been great tight ends who've kind of fallen into that. But it seems like NFL teams now are taking two other alternative options, and where that might be contributing to that decline in the production or the greatness factor that some quarterback and receiver combos have. Seems like, you've got some teams that ask for this like point guard type of offense, right? Where they have a good quarterback come in and they don't really feed him the weapons necessary because they're focused on the defense, and they expect him to just kind of share the ball around very equally, so that the defense doesn't know where the ball is going, and hopefully the quarterback's skill level and enough of the receiving skill level can keep the defense on their toes, right? Or you have these teams that go and grab a ton of offensive weapons, but then they don't have like a great quarterback. They usually have a not so great one, and they expect their talent on their, on the receiving end of the ball to overcome the woes at quarterback, right? So, we see that when teams are really active in free agency, and that's also not a great move. I feel like, other than the Bengals, who go against all of those and they just grab a great quarterback, great receivers, awesome supporting cast around their great receivers as well, but now they have no defense, right? There are no teams that are really trying that like great quarterback, great receiver, and then, expect the supporting cast to go along. And I feel like maybe there's something to look into there about like why offense is declining in that regard, right? Because you have a lot of teams that either have no clear wide receiver one or two wide receiver ones that end up kind of competing for the touches, and the quarterback usually can't feed both mouths and struggles to feed either of them.
Right.
That's a good point. All right, let's kind of do a little rapid fire for another couple teams. Do we feel like the Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl window is closing?
Yeah, I think a little. I mean, I think the clock is just ticking. They got to at least get to a Super Bowl here in the next year or two. Last year, you didn't even make the conference championship. 2 years ago, you were home for the conference champion and just totally laid an egg. So I think the clock is ticking. Lamar's still young, so that's good. But I mean, they can't beat Mahomes and Allen in the playoffs, and those are going to be the two guys he's going to have to play against probably for the next 6, 7, 8 years. So yeah. I think it's still open because Lamar is that good, and John Harbaugh is a solid coach, and they always will have a good team. But clock's ticking, and it's like if they don't make the Super Bowl in the next 2 years, I could see a shakeup. Maybe John Harbaugh's out or something like that. But I think the clock's ticking for them. Like Super Bowl window's closed a little bit, still open because Jackson's still in his prime, but definitely a lot of pressure on them to make a run in the next couple of years.
I'm going to mention him a little bit later, but I feel like someone that plays a larger role than we may be giving credit to in the Ravens' chances this year specifically is going to be Isaiah Likely, right?
Okay.
So we've got Derrick Henry, who's a beast of a running back. He's going to perform, as long as he's healthy, right? They've got a good receiving core. Obviously, they have their issues. They've struggled at times, but overall, talented receiving core, right? and then Lamar is a super dynamic playmaker, both running and passing. But every great quarterback needs that reliable tight end, and Likely has all the potential. I feel like a lot of the offseason has been spent talking about how this could be Likely's year to make the jump. And I feel like if he doesn't, they're still a good team, right? They're still going to make the playoffs, compete, and have to run into Mahomes or Allen and fight that fight and probably lose. But if he has a great season and he becomes a notorious weapon and somewhat of a threat on that offense, then I think that adds just that last piece to that offense that makes them so threatening, right? They have downfield guys that can beat you with speed. They've got a running back that can bruise you, and so what that does is fan out your defense. And if you have a smart tight end who can take hits, reel in catches, who can just eat up the middle of the field, like you cannot cover all that. It doesn't matter how you scheme it. That's not an offense you can cover. So I feel like Likely's kind of that last piece. If he has a great season, I see them being a very legitimate contender.
Okay, I like that. And if you guys are watching here on Sports Fluent, Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, let us know. Also in the comment section, we'll shout you guys out. We're pretty active. If you guys are active with us in the comments, let us know what you guys think about the Super Bowl windows of these teams that we're talking about. And the next team we're talking about is the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, these are the big three: the Chiefs, the Ravens, and now the Bills. But for me, I just think that the Bills are cursed. They're a cursed team. I mean, they made 4 straight Super Bowls and never won one. So it's like, I don't know what they have to do. Maybe if this new stadium that they're building with no dome in Buffalo is going to be new juju for them to exercise some demons. But I don't know. Like, and I think with the James Cook situation, I don't think people are realizing that, maybe it's not, best, that, you don't pay your running back unless you just want to lead with Josh Allen for, 20 carries a game. So,
right.
Jackson, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm actually looking up their depth chart right now to see who their running back room is behind James Cook, because obviously he's a good running back. I don't believe he deserves top of the league money, but he deserves good money for the role he's played. And I'm not impressed as I look.
Right. Yeah. Same.
Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, Darrington Evans. Loved Darrington Evans at App State. Being a North Carolinian, that's something I'm proud to shout out. But yeah, no, I mean, not super impressed with that. You got to pay the guy. I don't know if it's come out how much he was asking for, or where the negotiations stalled out at. But I'd say I'd be pretty frustrated as a Bills fan if they stalled out at a pretty reasonable price for Cook. If the Bills were just being stubborn. We talked a couple weeks ago about the mold for how to pay your running backs, right? Like you pay a top 7 running back what he's worth, and if it's 8 or below, you let him walk. So maybe if he's 8 or below, you do it, but you got to have a better room behind him if you're going to do that.
Agree.
Yeah. Tony,
yeah, I think the Bills are. It's almost like they're in the same spot as the Ravens. It's like, okay, like when are you going to take that next step? But I thought they were lucky to kind of beat the Ravens last year. I thought the Ravens kind of beat themselves in that game, because I think the Ravens have a better overall roster, a better overall team. And then, yeah, when you're dealing with the whole James Cook issue, and then they've thought Kincaid was going to be the guy. He hasn't really taken that next step, really. Can Keon Coleman be their number 1 guy to take the next step? So I think the Bills, I think their window's smaller than the Ravens. I would take the Ravens over the Bills if sitting here today, just because I like their roster better. And I think Lamar and Allen are kind of a wash, to be honest. But so I think their window's smaller, and I know that they're in a terrible division, so that really helps. But if the Patriots can pick it up a little bit, if the Jets can do anything, maybe that puts a little bit of pressure on them. But James Cook is probably like top 3-5 player on your team. He may not be a top 7 running back in the league, but it's like he's still one of your better players. You drafted him, you developed him. I would pay him, just because it's like, who are you going to get after that? Like, I know a lot of teams think they should go out there and find any running back and plug them in, but it's not always the case, as we've seen with other teams. So yeah, I would say their window's a little bit smaller, but kind of that same spot where the Ravens are as well.
Okay. So let's talk about some fringe playoff teams. What about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that finds their way, obviously with the softer division, some would say. Is their Super Bowl window open? Obviously, you got your aging stars. Baker is, I think, now is going to be approaching his second year of his new extension. So you kind of have to figure out. Obviously, if Baker doesn't do it this year, or they don't make a deeper run, obviously, I think they're kind of like that fringe, make the playoffs in round one team. But what do you guys think about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Anybody?
Yeah.
I'm on my way to Tampa. That's where I've taken a new job opportunity. So I'm pretty pumped to cheer on the Bake Show.
Okay.
But as far as a Super Bowl opportunity, I'm not super swayed on that. They'll make the playoffs again, not by their own their own talent level, but just by the weakness of the NFC South. I think that because they're in such a weak division, they may not garner enough respect. I think that they're a strong team. But the problem is just I don't see them duking it out with teams like teams in the NFC. Teams like the Packers or the Eagles or whoever. I don't really see them making it. I did a comp the other day, just looking at the Panthers schedule, who's my home team, and then the Bucks, and both of them play very easy schedules this year. So the difference being the Bucks are significantly better than the Panthers. They should make the playoffs this year, assuming that they probably win both of their head-to-heads with the Panthers. And then if you wash the entire two easy schedules, then they at least are 2 games ahead of them going out into the playoffs. I think they're one of those teams that you don't want to run into in the playoffs. You don't want to play them in the wild card round. They're going to shock you. If you got that like 3rd seed in the playoff and you kind of wish you hadn't fallen that low. And you got to play the Bucks, and yeah, I could see you not wanting to run into that team because they're frisky. Baker can play 2 very different styles of football just depending on the day. It seems like it's random chance. And then they have a ton of talent on their offense. 2 really young running backs, obviously studs at receiver, although aging. Decent tight end group, and then of course a pretty decent defense, not best in the league or anything, but a decent defense at best. So yeah, they're a team that I would never throw money on to make it that far. But if my team is stout and they have to play them in the wild card round, I'd sweat it a little bit more than you should.
Okay, Cody.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreements with Jackson there. I think they'll be a playoff team most likely. I think they're a good team. I don't see them as a Super Bowl threat unless like some of the top teams have some injury issues or something. But I think that's kind of where they're at. They're probably that like tier 2 level where you have like the teams we just talked about on tier 1, the Eagles. We'll see about the Lions this year, but those are kind of like your tier 1 teams. I would put the Buccaneers in tier 2. Really good story with Baker Mayfield kind of reviving his career down there. And I think they're a really well-ran organization, but I just think there's a ceiling to this team, and that's probably best case scenario NFC Championship game is probably where I see them.
Okay. All right, I got 3 more teams that we can try to run through. Welcome, Josh. Here's a team that, it depends on how you feel, but the 49ers, is that Super Bowl window shut for now, or is it still has a bit of, slimmer of hope? Josh, I'll let you kick this one off.
Regarding the Niners?
Yeah.
Man, I feel like it's hard to ever count the Niners out. I feel like they're consistent year in and year out, but it's kind of similar to what we talked about last week of when is mediocre going to be enough, and just bad enough just to hang on to the playoffs. And it was cool, and I appreciate when they knock out the Packers and everything else in between in the playoffs. That always makes me giddy. But, God, yeah. Ooh, man, I don't know, man. Like nobody's getting really any older, and you got homeboy at quarterback just took a big old chunk of the money at quarterback, so now you're not gonna be able to really afford to replenish the weapons that you need on offense and defense. And it's lost a good amount of veterans too on the defensive side of the ball. They got Debo gone as too. Who's kind of like, I know he was hurt a lot last year, but he was kind of like your go-to main guy for when you need a big play. When they're trying to tee off on CMC, you rely on him to make it happen. If Kittle's covered too, why not you rely on him to make it going on and here and there try to pass the ball. So I think the window's starting to go. In my opinion, I don't think it's ever happen unless all their draft picks hit all home runs this year, which that kind of stuff is pretty far in between. But until I see otherwise, I think definitely that window's a little smaller.
Okay. Cody, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's playoff window. I think's open, but Super Bowl window I think's closed, at least for now. I'd like to see what that kind of the next, like the 2.0 of the 49ers is, because you lost a lot of good players. You lost Debo, you lost Drake Greenlaw, Ufunga, guys like that out the building. So what's this next iteration of this team now that Brock's taken up, like, I don't know, a quarter of their salary cap at this point with about $50 million a year. So I think the playoff window is open. They got a really easy schedule, so that'll help. But Super Bowl, I don't think is a window that's open, but they could shock me and make a run. They need a lot of things to go right. Like CMC's got to have a healthy season, which he's only really had like 3 of those in his career. So like there's a lot of things they're riding on. You got to hope that Brandon Ayuk comes back healthy. You got to hope that Pearsall hits. There's a lot of things that they need to have go right for them. And I think it's just too many ifs, but I think they can make the playoffs as a wild card, but I don't know if they can make the Super Bowl.
Okay. Jackson?
Yeah. They were pretty bad last year. Obviously, not a lot of those ifs went their way, but they didn't have a good year last year. And if you look at their roster compared to last year, obviously, disregarding all injuries, they didn't get better. They did not get better this offseason. They arguably got worse. They paid a ton of money to Brock, who has the same weapons as last year, -1. You can pretty much bet on at some point they will not have McCaffrey or Ayuk, and maybe not even Kittle in, right? All those guys get hurt, and they have at least 1 to 3 games each year where none of them play, and you're going on waivers and picking up like Jawan Jennings or Ricky Pearsall if they're available, hoping that they cash out, and that's when they throw it to some guy you've never heard of 14 times a game. I don't know if you guys remember the COVID game where everyone on their team had diagnosed with COVID or injured or whatever. They had 2 receivers on the team. It was like Trent Taylor and some other guy, and I picked up Trent Taylor, and this absolute nobody from a school I never heard of had like 180 yards. Like I had 50-50 shot and got it wrong, but their roster got worse. I don't really see how they're going to make a push. Probably, they could make the playoffs, as you say, but I don't see any chance of them making it out of the first round. And really, if I had to put money on playoff or no playoff, I think I'd say no playoff this year.
Okay. All right, let's 2 more teams. Let's go to this team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do they have a window, or is it just a wall? Do we still think it's a painted on window from what it used to be? Cody, I'll let you start this one.
I think it's a wall. I think that wall is first round of the playoffs. Like we've seen, 3 years in a row now. They somehow find a way to get into the playoffs after a slow start, find a way to get to over 500. That like Tomlin, like he'll never be under 500. Like that's, I guess, his thing.
Yeah.
And then they get in the first round and they just get hammered by the big 3 up top, whether it's the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs. And I guess Rodgers, he is an upgrade over Russell Wilson. I don't know how much of an upgrade he is, but you lose Najee Harris. I know we have kind of our reservations about him, but you lose Najee Harris. You lose Pickens. TJ Watt's kind of holding out. You have the whole contract situation there. So like the vibes aren't great around them, even with Rodgers there. And I think the Bengals will be better this year, at least on offense. Their defense will still give up 40, but they'll probably score 45 or something like that. And then you still got the Ravens to play, and then the AFC is just tough. So I think it's a wall, and that wall is first round of the playoffs. And so I don't think their Super Bowl window's open at all.
Jackson?
Yeah, no, I don't see them as a contender at all. Same thing with the Niners, right? I don't see that they got any better this offseason, right? They made a lot of moves. They moved their wide receiver 1 out, but then took in another wide receiver 1, both with some decent rage problems. So I don't really see much. I see that as a very lateral movement, So I don't see that they're going to get over that hump. Rodgers is not going to take that team to the next level. He's on the decline himself. So yeah, I'd say no on them. They'll find some way to break 500, and we'll all be shocked again. But I don't think that they'll take it any further than that.
Josh?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I agree with both Cody and Jackson. I mean, most likely a wall, maybe be able to make it that first round, give or take. But at the same time, Rodgers is who he is for a reason. That man can make some crazy, no business making kind of throws and whatnot, which can make it break a game. So, I mean, there could be that wild card team that, kind of grinds every single game out to win at the last seconds of the game kind of concept. And whatnot. He has that on his side of the experience of when games get tough and whatnot, he'll throw the game on his back. I mean, yes, he is old and dusty or whatnot, but, so was Favre back when he joined the Vikings, and man was slinging it like nobody's business and whatnot. So will Rodgers do the kind of same thing with the Steelers? Probably not, but I do give him that boxer's chance that they could sneak up on people because people might be sleeping on them. And if you have teams sleeping on you, that means they'll won't bring the A game for all 60 minutes, and that team could capitalize and surprise some people and find out the hard way.
Yeah, I think teams playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers will have a good night's sleep because that team freaking stinks. I mean, I think it's like with, your Favre statement is like, well, Favre never had to deal with a torn Achilles, right? So, like, yes, this will be year 2 removed from the injury. So, in theory, he should be back to his normal self. But what is his normal self at 42, 41, right? It's like, what is that new baseline? And again, if the Pittsburgh Steelers, the offensive line was anything close to what it was last year, I don't think he's going to have a chance. Obviously, they're going to get back their first-round pick, their tackle that they drafted last year, who missed the entire last year. So there'll be pieces there. Better is the question mark. They'll definitely be younger. I mean, that's one thing that this team needs to do is undergo a youth movement. Similar to this last team that we're going to talk about that has a full-on youth movement for the last 2 years is the Green Bay Packers. Is their window even open for Super Bowl playoffs? I don't know. Josh, I'll let you go first.
I don't know. Being NFC North is just a deep division on its own and whatnot. I mean, it's well-rounded overall. Like, no team generally has any glaring holes like, oh, that's an easy dub no matter what. Like, you don't got that. Like, every team has a solid and high potential, high ceiling quarterback, decent wide receiver core, solid defenses, solid everything around the board. So they do have a juggernaut essentially to get through. Get through the Vikings, the Lions, and the Bears. I mean, Bears could take that step with Ben at the helm, and you got the Vikings essentially all chips in with what they're trying to do. You got the Lions still being the Lions and whatnot, still kind of juggernaut themselves. Got better if anything else, but yeah. God, I know that I say it's kind of. I would say the window's kind of half opened, not fully closed, not all the way open, but with the right finesse and squeezing through it. I mean, to get through, try to sneak into the playoffs and can surprise some people and whatnot. But yet Jordan still has to prove himself and whatnot. I don't think he's put that team on his back like the Packers assumed he was going to be, kind of carrying that team because when lights were bright and for him time to shine, he really didn't do that. He kind of fell back a little bit. And if you, as a quarterback, can't rise to the occasion, how do you expect that everyone else on your team is supposed to do that too? So I think it's kind of an in-between thing that can make a deep run or miss the playoffs entirely. So I think if he falls a lot on Jordan, that's for sure.
Jackson, what do you think?
Yeah, Josh has a point. There's really not a team there that in that division that you can chalk up as an easy dub, right? The Vikings are a very talented roster with an unproven quarterback, so we're not quite sure, what they'll be. But the talent on the roster alone means that, every every couple of games, they're going to be able to shine, right? They have got a decent defense. They've got talent around McCarthy. So if McCarthy plays a decent game, that's a dangerous team, right? I think that the Bears are dangerous with how much they've leaned in and supported Caleb. So if he ends up being the guy they thought he was, they're a dangerous team. Obviously, the Lions are a threat. They were, had one of the best records in football last year, and they seemed to be rolling until they just kind of hit a wall, right? And so I don't see them coming out. They're going to come out bruised and battered from that division, and then it's kind of what the SEC talks about when they go into the playoffs, right? But I mean, it's a tough division. I think that they've got like a little peep open, right? Jordan Love's a good quarterback. They've got good talent on the team. They're one of those teams that's it's consistent across the board. They're not too heavily offensive or too heavily defensive leaning. They're just a pretty consistent team across the board. But yeah, I think that when we talked about betting odds, they were one of those like outer fringe. Definitely not a favorite, probably not even like top 6, but one of those guys on the outside looking in that you're like, if you're willing to part with $20, you could actually win some money on that. So yeah, I don't hate it. I think their window's a little bit open, just because as threatening as that division is, each one of those teams, I just kind of also mentioned an Achilles heel that they have, right? One team is leaning all chips in on Caleb Williams. One is all chips in on JJ McCarthy. Neither quarterback has proven to be a top of the league guy. And then, the Lions are the Lions. All the Lions fans that I talk to feel very much like last year was their chance to win it, and that they might have a fall from grace after a very successful year. They're not really looking at having the same success, or they're pretty pessimistic, as a Lions fan probably deserves to be.
Cody?
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of the points that Josh and Jackson have made. Like, the Packers are kind of like the Steelers, where they're always going to be at least decent. They're always going to be competitive. I feel like they're just a really well-run organization. They're always going to be competitive. But I think they have some glaring holes. Like, I still don't think they have a number one wide receiver. Like, nobody in that room has kind of stepped up to be that guy. I love Josh Jacobs, but that's really the only thing on offense that I really love. Their defense was better last year, but it wasn't great. And then I'm still not sold on Jordan Love. I know they gave him a huge contract after 8 games, his third year in the league. So I thought that was a little premature, but I still haven't seen, like, he has flashes where, like, there's games he looks like a top 5-7 guy. And then there's games where he looks like, okay, is that guy even top 15 in the league? So he's just super inconsistent. And then, yeah, that division, like Jackson said, there's holes for each team in that division, but there's also like stars on each one of those teams, like in that division. So it's a lot to kind of deal with those on a weekly basis. So they went 1-5 in that division last year. So I don't know how good they actually are. So I would say their window is a little open for the Super Bowl, more of a playoff window, but not really exactly like Super Bowl window.
Yeah, I think honestly, the Packers and Jordan Love, I think Jordan Love probably should be in jail because he's so streaky, right? Like, he streaks all the time. And like, he has like at the end of the year, like, he has this like Joe Burrow-esque way of like just going on a run to end the seasons, right? But to get into seasons, he's just choppy. And obviously he had the injury, was it last year or 2 years ago, where he had the injury in Brazil, maybe? Was that last year?
Yeah, that was last year against the Eagles.
Yeah, so again, so maybe for whatever reason, his start to the year needs to kind of figure out how they can start better. Because I think they are a team, again, when they figure it out and actually are in rhythm, they are dangerous. They're fun. They're electric. They're young. And actually, Jordan Love is kind of the perfect example of kind of bringing back full circle. We started off with talking about point guard type quarterbacks. I think he kind of should be that, especially with the no true number one. Like, you got guys that you like, right? It's like, you got a bunch of people that you really like, but you're not really committed to, right? Unless something, you got that, major flaw with Christian Watson. Hamstrings are just not there. Romeo Dobbs just doesn't like the backers. I don't know. Like, he just, decides, like, I hate everybody. Give me the ball more. And then, obviously you got Tucker Kraft, and now you got Matthew Golden, and then Jalen something.
Reed.
Reed, thank you. Jaden Reed, yes. So yeah, you got guys that can be capable, but I think in order for them to really shine, it's on Jordan Love's shoulders, right? It's on his shoulders to really break out.
I think if you're talking point guard status, though, Love is so aggressive that I don't know if the point guard is an accurate enough assessment, because it's like if a point guard is trying to throw a lob or a full court pass every play of the game, right? He's so aggressive that he creates turnovers, or just doesn't make his reads correctly because he wants the big splash plays. Maybe a big player turnover type of point guard, like a Russell Westbrook. Like
you're talking Chino Hills, LaMelo Ball.
Exactly. Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh man,
yeah.
We're going deep.
That would be like if Jordan Love got to snap the ball 20 yards behind the defense, because LaMelo was scoring 90 a game, just sitting there cherry picking because they had 7-footers on defense that could play well enough 4-on-5.
For sure. He definitely has, I think the funny thing about Jordan Love and whatever they do in that organization is he has a blend of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. He has the Aaron Rodgers mannerisms, but he definitely has a little more gunslinger to him that maybe he needs to work on. But I mean, I like a good gunslinger. I mean, I'm a big Jameis Winston fan, like a guy who just says, he's down there somewhere, I think.
Chuck it.
But all right, so let's talk about some of our biggest breakouts, right? Who we think this could be part one of many, because obviously there's a lot that we can go into. I'll start it off. I'll set the table. This is a guy, whether you're looking for someone in fantasy football or whatever. Maybe we go all offensive. I don't know if you have defensive guys or whatever, but I'm gonna go with Brenton Strange, tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think he will be a fantasy steal for one part. The Jacksonville Jaguars also didn't invest really anything else in the tight end room, and Brenton Strange was a second-round draft pick a year ago. And I think he went to Penn State. Penn State has had a run of really good tight ends. And so we shall see. I think he's going to get a lot of targets, and I think he's really athletic. And I think in this new system, I think he's going to do really well and get a lot of targets for Trevor Lawrence or whoever backs up Trevor Lawrence. Let's see. Jackson, you go first.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great candidates, right? I've seen a lot of people talking about Dalton Kincaid being, finally taking that big step. I obviously mentioned Isaiah Likely. If you haven't noticed, I love my tight ends. So that's, those are two very possible scenarios, right? I've seen a lot of chatter around Warren getting some love over there in Pittsburgh. But for me, Pittsburgh has the same disease that Dallas has, where their number one cannot reach his full potential because their number two is this frisky, exciting back that runs so hard. So whoever it is that's behind Warren this year, does anybody have that off the top of their head?
I think it's Caleb Johnson out of Iowa.
Out of Iowa, yeah. So a guy who definitely has the youth and the talent there to be that frisky, exciting running back. And the power too. He's a stronger guy as well. So yeah, I wouldn't bank on Warren, but I like our two Warren, our running back. Obviously, I think that our rookie out of Penn State is a stud. But you can't really call it a breakout if it's his rookie year, or else I would probably slam the like Ashton Genty or someone like that.
That's fair. Cody, what do you got?
I'm gonna go with Marvin Harrison Jr. Thought he had an underrated season as a rookie. Obviously came with a ton of hype. He was supposed to be one of the best wide receiver prospects in a long time. He came and obviously out of Ohio State that just breeds wide receivers pretty much. So, but he kind of had a quietly good year, 62 catches, 885 yards, 8 touchdowns. So it's that's pretty solid for a rookie.
Yeah.
And you have Trey McBride there in Arizona. So he's not the only threat out there for Kyler Murray. So I think he takes the next step this year and kind of shows, because I was really high on him coming out of Ohio State. I thought he was legit. I thought he was the best wide receiver that had came out of there. Now maybe Jeremiah Smith comes out in 2 years and just blows him out of the water and is the best one to come out of there. But as of right now, I thought he was the best that came out of Ohio State, and that's including Chris Olave, Godwin, not Godwin, but Jackson Smith and Jig, Garrett Wilson. There we go. And then Emeka Ibuka this last year. So it's like this is a revolving door. And I think he's got all the skills. Big guy, of course. He's got the lineage with Marvin Harrison being his dad. So he's going to work hard. He's going to show up and do his thing. So I think he breaks out this year. I think I'm not high on Arizona, but I think they could have a solid offense with Kyler Murray, James Conner, Trey McBride, and Marvin Harrison Jr. And maybe he goes for 1,100, 1,200 yards and kind of shows what he was supposed to be coming out last year.
I think Marvin Harrison needs to buy Kyler Murray the new edition of Call of Duty to get on his good side because I mean,
he's not going to practice.
I mean, it would be games where he would dominate the first quarter. Like he'd be like, "Oh, this man's about to go crazy," and then literally not a single catch the rest of the game. And it's like, what did you do to him? And
it's like it was. It's like it was the complete week of media complaining about the last week of him losing some targets, where Kyler would take every first quarter to be like, "Here, damn, like stop talking about it.
Here's the ball." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then would stop throwing it to him once he's like, all right, he's got 6 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown. Like that's good enough for me. I'll stop throwing it his way now. Now it's just no touchdowns, McBride for the rest of the game.
Right. So 12 it's like catches, like he would have 12 catches for like 64 yards, McBride, and no touchdowns. And no touchdowns. That drove me crazy about McBride.
Yeah, he was on my fantasy team. It was very frustrating, but he's putting up a good fantasy performance every week. It's just you wanted to see him find pay dirt once.
Right. Yeah. No kidding. Josh, what do you got?
So a few aspects, like I come pick up with Jackson almost, but for a fantasy football perspective, maybe a different topic for a different day. But like I know when the media attacks him or like the receiver, whoever, like complains about wanting targets or whatnot, I'm like, if he's on Freddy where I'm going to get him because I already know he's about to get them targets. I already know he's about to eat and feast. This looks like 1 week I'm going to pick him up, or if he's on my bench, I'm starting him over a solid guy overall. It's works out every single time. But a different aspect, I got 2 guys. Might get scoffed at. One is Jordan Mason, running back with Minnesota. I know he's kind of almost second string behind Aaron Jones.
He's going to eat carries. He will eat carries away from you. You don't want Aaron Jones still getting your lead back at 37. I don't know how old he is, but he's been.
I think he's 29. I think right now, something like that. But he's has a hard time staying healthy in the past like couple years or so. Sure, he can catch and block right and everything else between, but he couldn't really. Which I think get the pay dirt, as much as he wanted to. Like Vikings struggled to, punch that ball and struggle for some reason inside the 5-yard line. You think it'd be easy, but they couldn't do it. So that's why I brought Jordan Mason. So pair that with Aaron Jones struggling to get stay healthy at the same time because he gets pretty dinged up pretty easily. I think Jordan Mason could put up some low-key pretty solid numbers. Another one is CMC. Hold on, all of you. All right, wait a minute. I know he also is kind of double-edged sword. What I just said, kind of, he also has obviously a hard time staying healthy. But when he's on, he's the best player all around, no matter who is existing on this planet. Everything up and down. Because you say Debo's gone. Don't know when other dude had a receiver, forgot his name. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. It's been a long day. He's had a hard time staying healthy. Kittle has a hard time staying healthy as well. And then, you got Brock back there. He's like, well, I need to count on somebody. And who better than CMC, who running back, line up in the slot, all that. He can do everything else between. He's just absolutely a freak of nature athlete. When he's healthy and he's on, if he can stay healthy, you'll carry the whole team and whatnot. Like I said, will he stay healthy? Probably not. But if he hits and actually stays healthy, a dude by far, no adds and buts about it, he's going to eat and feast no matter what the game is, what the weather is. Don't matter. He's that safety blanket that every quarterback dreams of. Again, if he stays healthy, it's a big if.
It feels inevitable that he's going to fall to that 8th or 9th pick in the fantasy draft if I'm sitting there in a 10 to 12 man league. And it's so difficult to say no to that, right? Mm-hmm. To say, no, I don't want Christian McCaffrey because of all the upside that you just mentioned. But it's also inevitable that it bites you immediately. He's going to sit out week 1.
Yeah.
Right.
arthritis before, like,
yeah.
you're gonna find out like an hour before the game. Oh yeah, he's out. He has arthritis.
Yeah,
What?
Got tightness or something. Yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah, like I don't know. I wouldn't consider CMC a breakout, but like obviously we know what he can do when he is healthy, right?
Right.
So, which is we got some more time. So, I got 3, but I probably hold it to 1 or 2. But I think the guy that I think, because I got some like down low, like from downtown Steph Curry type sleep breakouts. But
reach, come on! If we only got 5
saying,
minutes,
let's hear it. Yeah.
I think Devon Vele can be a top 5 receiver this year in that Broncos offense. I would like it's between him and Marvin Mims. I don't want to keep falling for the Marvin Mims hype because dude is electric. He's fast. He's everything that you want to be in a deep threat guy. But for whatever reason, him and Sean Payton just butt heads so much. But he won't cut him. He won't cut him at all. But the guy who has the eye of Bo Nix and Sean Payton, is Vele. And I think he's a big body guy. He is old. He's 27. So it's kind of now or never, to be honest with you. So I think it kind of proves that, like, this is the time for him to really break out, really. Obviously the old relationship between Bo and Vele, they were both from high school together, probably. I mean, 27, 25, like they were teammates. So I like him a lot. Trey Benson for the Cardinals. I think obviously they did re-sign James Conner, but I can see him out, getting his carries. And the last one is probably Isaac Guerrera. I can't see the
Guerrero.
Yeah. There you go. From Louisville, speed demon, and I think he will stay healthy for the 49ers. And I think he will be the guy that inevitably becomes the lead back, which is kind of it's like a rite of passage for 49er running backs where you're like third on the depth chart for a couple years and then your moment happens, and you just take off and you get your 1 to 2 year run, and then they'll do it again. And they'll find another 6th round guy, which I think they got a speed demon from, I want to say Auburn. No. Jacquez Hunter went to the Rams. But they got another guy late this year as well who will break out next year for the 49ers. But those are my guys that I like right now. And obviously Brenton Strange as well, I said. So you guys got any deep sleepers? Deep in the bag?
Deep. I don't know, how deep are we talking? My other guy I think he'll be a top 5 running back at the end of this year, was Bucky Irving.
Everyone is on the Bucky Irving train.
Hey, 1,100 yards last year. I think he'll overtake Rashad White. I don't know if that's a deep.
He's already overtook him, to be honest.
Yeah, so he's already overtook him. Good offense. They're always going to score points. Doesn't have to worry about people loading the box because they got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Abuka now. So I don't know if that's a deep sleeper, like I said, but I think he's going to break out. I think by year's end, he'll be a top 5 fantasy running back in the league.
I think people talk about the Panthers offense and how, they've added and they've gotten better, right? Talk about the addition of our shiny new rookie receiver on top of plenty of other additions, especially at offensive line. But I think people are forgetting about the pure athleticism and raw ability of Xavier Legette. I think that he's now top 5 is crazy, right? I'm not saying he's going to finish top 5 or anything. I think he could.
His own team.
What's that?
Hopefully he's top 2 on his own team.
I think he'll end up being the number 1 guy there. I'm not impressed with Tet. I think he just doesn't create enough separation. He's a go up and get.
He's been looking quick in practice. I'm not gonna lie. He looked quicker than I.
Well, he's practicing against the worst defense in the NFL. So
fair enough.
Yeah, you go play against a JV team and you're gonna look nice in practice. So
he needs all the reps against JC Horn, and then if he wins a fair amount, then I think he's okay because JC Horn's
right. Well, I think that attention around Tet is going to allow Legette to play a little more free, because Thielen is a great receiver. He plays his role well, but teams aren't worried about him dicing up their defense like he used to. He's just getting older. He's going to play a crucial role in keeping defenses honest, those check down routes, just finding a way to get open. But he's no number one guy. So I think that this shiny new toy of Bryce's is going to take the attention of the defense and allow Leggett to have enough breakout games to put together a pretty decent season. He's that kind of receiver that if you have him on your team, you're always going to bench him when he scores, 30 fantasy points and start him when he scores 3.
My hot take for the Carolina Panthers is that Jalen Coker will be wide receiver 1, which I love Jalen Coker, big Jalen Coker, Cokehead, as their fans of him are called.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Horn will niche out a big role in the slot for you guys, a big role. I think he's just insane separation. I think we'll see what Hunter Renfrow or Adam Thielen have in the tank, which I think will slow his development down. But I think Jimmy Horn is probably going to make enough plays on special teams for you guys to where that he's going to wind up by like week 12 being like a pivotal guys for your Super Bowl run this year. So,
right.
Josh, you have anything else before we wrap it up?
Xavier Worthy, I think. Kelsey ain't getting any younger or whatnot, and I think they really miss Tyreek for sure. That speed demon and whatnot, and I figured they just got a little test trial. Those little breadcrumbs here for this game. Here's a little breadcrumbs for this game. Kind of see how he'd be able to adapt and whatnot. He was definitely drafted that forward to be his replacement, 100%. So I definitely think he will be absolutely going bonkers this year. I think easily over 1,200 yards. I think he can easily get 9-10 touchdown catches and a few 5 rushing touchdowns. I think easy peasy. I think he'll absolutely take off this year.
I love that pick. I had him scoring 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl too, so he's still got me cheesing about that.
Yeah.
Good pull. No Noah Gray. No Noah Gray love.
Oh
no. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. I think next week, here's our assignment for next week. We need to get spicy. Spicy takes, spicy breakouts. So spicy, the Carolina Reaper. I'm not talking about Bryce Young. I'm talking about spicy everything. Let's just go for it, right? Let's throw stuff onto the walls. Let's see what it sticks. We'll put it down on a Post-it note, and we'll be able to watch it throughout the season. So this will be our noteworthy show next week, where we will have spicy takes and see what happens and see how close or not close we got to it, so we can have a good laugh at the end of the season. So I think that would be our nugget for next week. That is all that we have for today. So make sure you guys stay locked here at Sports Fluent. We're From the Sidelines, and we will catch you guys next week. See ya.
Peace.
Oh, Canada.
Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.